There is a quiet leak in your life. You don't see it. You don't hear it. You barely feel it. But every single day, it quietly steals your future. Not in thousands, not in dramatic losses, but in small, innocent, almost forgettable amounts. A cup of coffee, a snack, a subscription, a habit. And one day, you wake up wondering why financial freedom feels so far away. In the Latte Factor, David Bach tells us a simple but life-altering truth. Wealth is not about how much you earn. It's about what you do with what you already have. And sometimes, the difference between struggling forever and living free lies in something as small as a daily latte. The story begins with Zoey Daniels, a young professional living in New York City. She has a decent job, she works hard. She dreams of owning her own home. But like many of us, she feels stuck. Every month, her paycheck disappears. Rent, bills, food, coffee, small pleasures that make life feel manageable. She tells herself she just doesn't earn enough. If only she made more, she would save more. But then she meets Henry, a wise and observant barista who notices something she doesn't. He sees her daily routine, the expensive coffee, the little indulgences, the quiet financial stress behind her eyes. And instead of judging her, he asks a simple question. Do you know how much your latte is really costing you? This is where the concept of the Latte Factor is born. It's not really about coffee. It's about awareness. It's about identifying the small, repeated expenses in your life that add up over time. $5 a day doesn't feel dangerous, but $5 invested daily over decades, that becomes hundreds of thousands of dollars, possibly more. Bach introduces the power of compounding in a way that feels almost magical. Money, when invested consistently, begins to grow on its own. It earns interest. Then that interest earns interest. And over time, the growth accelerates. The earlier you start, the less you need to invest. Time becomes more powerful than income. Discipline becomes more powerful than luck. Zoey learns that her daily coffee habit, combined with other unnoticed spending, is costing her not just dollars, but dreams. When calculated over 40 years with compound interest, her small daily indulgence could turn into a fortune. Suddenly, the problem isn't her salary, it's her habits. But the Latte Factor is not a story about deprivation. Bach is clear. This isn't about cutting joy from your life. It's about being intentional. The real question is not can you afford a latte? The real question is what matters most to you. That's where the 3 secrets to financial freedom enter the story. The first secret is simple. Pay yourself first. Before you pay your landlord, before you pay your bills, before you spend on anything else. You pay your future self, automatically, consistently, without thinking. Henry explains to Zoey that most people save what's left over, and because there's rarely anything left, they rarely save. But wealthy people reverse the formula. They invest first, then live on the rest. It's not about willpower. It's about automation. Automation removes emotion from the equation. When money is automatically transferred into savings or investments, the moment you get paid, you don't feel the loss. You adjust your lifestyle around what remains. Over time, you stop missing what you never see. The second secret is the power of compounding. We often underestimate time. We think we need large sums to begin investing. But Bach shows that starting small, starting now, is infinitely more powerful than waiting for the perfect moment. The perfect moment rarely comes. But time, once lost, never returns. Zoey begins to see that her age is her greatest financial asset. The younger you start, the less you have to sacrifice. The math becomes almost unbelievable. Small, consistent investments grow into life-changing sums because time does the heavy lifting. The third secret is knowing what you're saving for. Money without purpose feels meaningless. Saving just to save feels restrictive. But saving for a dream, that feels empowering. Zoey's dream is owning a home. When she connects her daily spending to that dream, everything shifts. Every skipped expense is no longer a loss. It's a step closer to ownership, a step closer to stability, a step closer to freedom. This is the emotional core of the Latte Factor. It's not about numbers. It's about clarity. When your daily habits align with your deepest desires, discipline becomes easier. Sacrifice becomes choice. Bach also addresses a common excuse: I don't make enough. He dismantles this belief with compassion. Yes, income matters, but behavior matters more. Many high earners live paycheck to paycheck. Many modest earners build wealth quietly over time. The difference is not brilliance, it's consistency. Zoey initially believes homeownership in New York is impossible, but Henry challenges her assumptions. What if the barrier isn't income? What if it's mindset? What if she has more control than she thinks? This is where the book gently shifts from financial advice to personal empowerment. The Latte Factor is ultimately about control. Control over habits. Control over choices. Control over your future. Bach emphasizes that financial freedom is not about becoming a millionaire overnight. It's about building a system, a simple, automatic system that works quietly in the background of your life. Investing doesn't need to be complex. It doesn't require constant monitoring or stock picking. It requires participation, regular contributions, low-cost investments, patience, and patience is perhaps the hardest lesson of all. We live in a world obsessed with quick results, viral success, overnight wealth, but compounding is slow at first, almost invisible. Like planting a tree and staring at the soil, waiting for growth. But beneath the surface, roots are forming. Strength is building. And one day, growth becomes undeniable. Zoey's transformation is not dramatic. She doesn't suddenly win the lottery. She doesn't receive a massive promotion. She simply changes her behavior. She identifies her latte factor. She automates her savings. She invests consistently. She aligns her spending with her dream. And slowly, the impossible becomes possible. The book also highlights the emotional burden of financial stress, the quiet anxiety of living paycheck to paycheck, the fear of unexpected expenses, the feeling of being trapped. Bach reminds us that financial freedom is not about luxury, it's about peace. Peace of mind comes from knowing you are building something, that your future self will be cared for, that you are not entirely dependent on circumstances. There's also a powerful message about ownership. Renting feels temporary. Investing feels permanent. Owning a piece of your future, whether through property or investments, changes how you see yourself. You move from consumer to creator, from spender to builder. Throughout the story, Henry plays the role of quiet mentor. He doesn't lecture, he asks questions. He lets Zoey discover the answers herself. And that's intentional. Because financial awareness cannot be forced. It must be realized. The Latte Factor invites us to pause and examine our own lives. What are our daily lattes? What small expenses have become invisible? What dreams have we postponed because we assumed we couldn't afford them? It challenges the narrative that wealth is reserved for the lucky or privileged. Instead, it suggests that wealth is often built in silence, through small, disciplined acts repeated over decades. There's something deeply comforting about that idea. You don't need to be extraordinary. You need to be consistent. The book also emphasizes the importance of starting now, not next year, not after a raise, not after paying off everything perfectly. Now, because the cost of waiting is invisible but enormous. Every year delayed is compounding lost. Imagine two people. One starts investing at 25 and stops at 35. The other starts at 35 and invests until 65. The first person may end up with more, simply because time worked in their favor. That is the quiet miracle of compounding. The Latte Factor strips away complexity. It removes intimidation. It replaces fear with clarity. Financial freedom is not a mystery. It's math plus behavior. But beneath the math lies something deeper: identity. When you begin to pay yourself first, you begin to see yourself differently. You are someone who plans, someone who prepares, someone who values their future. That identity shift changes everything. Zoey's journey is relatable because it mirrors our own internal battles. The tension between present pleasure and future security. The temptation to postpone responsibility. The comfort of blaming income instead of habits. Yet, Through small changes, she builds momentum. And momentum builds confidence. And confidence builds freedom. By the end of the story, Zoey is no longer a passive participant in her financial life. She is proactive, empowered, intentional. She realizes that her dream home was never as distant as she believed. It was hidden behind small, daily choices. The Latte Factor leaves us with a simple but haunting question. What is your latte costing you? Not just financially, but emotionally. What dreams are delayed? What freedom is postponed? What peace is sacrificed for small, unconscious habits? And more importantly, what could happen if you redirected just a fraction of your daily spending toward your future? The beauty of Bach's message lies in its accessibility. You don't need a financial degree. You don't need insider knowledge. You need awareness, automation, patience. Financial freedom is not an event. It's a process. A quiet, steady process that unfolds over years. In a world that constantly tells us to consume more, upgrade more, spend more, the Latte Factor whispers something radical. Maybe you already have enough. Maybe the key is not earning more, but keeping more. Not chasing more, but valuing more. As this story closes, imagine your future self, older, wiser, looking back at today. What would they beg you to start? What small habit would they ask you to change? What investment would they thank you for making? The power to answer those questions does not lie in your next paycheck. It lies in your next decision. Because wealth is not built in grand gestures. It's built in quiet mornings, in skipped expenses, in automatic transfers, in patience. The latte in your hand is temporary, but the freedom you could build instead can last a lifetime. And maybe that's the real lesson of the Latte Factor. Financial freedom isn't about sacrifice. It's about alignment. Aligning your daily actions with your deepest dreams. Aligning your present choices with your future peace. So tomorrow morning, when you reach for that small, routine purchase, pause. Not to deny yourself joy, but to ask yourself a powerful question. Is this bringing me closer to the life I truly want? Because in the end, your future is not decided by one big decision. It is shaped by thousands of small ones. And today, you get to choose.